Hey everybody, John Wollwerth here. We are going to be taking an adventure here in just a few months, going about 3,000 miles across country with our Teardrop camper. And so we're trying to prepare it for being able to take that kind of a long trip. And one of the things with that is the weather sealing. And you know, if your Teardrop camper was weather sealed correctly the first time, then more power to you. But this video is for those of us who might have some leaks and want to make sure that everything is weather tight before we get going. Now with a Teardrop camper, especially with a home built, there's going to be certain things that you have to you have to re-weather seal, and a lot of maintenance that has to be done. And if you're going to have leaks in a Teardrop camper, there's a few places where you're probably going to have them. So one of the places that you're probably going to get leaks is in the hurricane hinge, and I have a whole other video that's dedicated to that. I'll put a link to it in the description. We took care of that. One of the other things that can leak is the door hinges. We're not going to deal with that today. A third place is if you've got a fan on top, that's a likely place to leak. However, having said all that, if you have water intrusion coming into the main cabin of your Teardrop camper, there's the inside of ours with our mattress and everything like that. But anyway, if you have water coming in, especially if you have a really hard time finding where the leak is coming from, very likely the place where it's coming from is this join right here where the wall meets with the ceiling. And usually the reason for that is because these weather stripping things here are not particularly great, especially if you're just using like silicone caulk or something like that. And so what we're going to do today is take this off, and we are going to reseal it with weatherproof tape. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is get this rubber strip off, and this is just a strip that keeps rain from getting into the screw heads. So I'm going to pull that off up to the point where the track ends, which in this case is right here, and then I'm going to start removing all the screws that hold that in. There's quite a few. Now this side has not leaked, but the other side did, and I've already done this to the other side, but I'm not going to give it the opportunity to continue to leak, or to start a new leak on this side, rather, is what I should be saying. See, something may have been some water intrusion in that part of it, because this screw does not want to come out, and that's a lot of times a good indication that the wood underneath it has degraded, usually from water. So I'm going to have to take a pair of pliers and get that one out. Okay, so I've got all the screws out of that track right now, and I finally got that one screw out, and it was the only one that was rusty. Rust obviously is a good indication that there was some water that got into there, so it's a good thing we're doing this. Everything else seemed pretty solid though. All the other screws came out well. They were not rusty. They did not have any indications that there had been water that came in, so should be in pretty good shape. So now we are going to start pulling this track off. I probably should start from the other end. And this may be easy to get off. It may be very hard to get off, depending on what kind of gunk is underneath it, what kind of silicone was put on it, or whatever. There's a lot of silicone under this one, which is not the way we want to do things. So I'm going to pull it off, and then once that's off, we're going to be completely cleaning the underside of it, pulling off all of this silicone, because we don't want to try to get our weather stripping to stick to silicone. It's just not going to happen. All right, so there was quite a bit of silicone underneath here, some of which has gotten dirty and weathered. I'm taking you got to get all of it off if you want your tape to stick. If you got a plastic scraper, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I'm using an old credit card here, but you don't want to use, at least on mine, we don't want to use a razor blade because this is actually enameled steel that I've got coating the outside of my camper. And if I cut through it with a razor blade, it will start to rust. So I definitely do not want that. So we'll come back after we get all this off. Okay, so we've got all of the big chunks of silicone taken off here. And I was just going to show you here, if you can see this, this is where a lot of leaks come from in teardrop campers, the home-built ones anyway. If these panels do not come together completely well, there'll be a little bit of a gap and water will run inside it, and then it'll run along the ceiling, and you can't figure out where that leak comes from. So that's why we're doing this. The tape that I'm going to be putting over this is going to start from up here, and it's just going to wrap over the side completely so that this gap will not exist anymore. So this is the way it should have been done in the first place when it was built, but it wasn't. So we're going to correct the problem now. Okay, so I'm now taking some Goo Gone. You might try mineral spirits, some other types of solvents, depending on what kind of substance you had that was weather sealing your camper, or not weather sealing it, as the case may be. But the Goo Gone's working for me. It's taking off the excess material that I had. You want to make sure this is really, really clean because your tape has to stick to the surface or water will get in underneath it, and you definitely don't want that. Okay, so we've got all the silicone off of it, and now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and just clean it again with Windex. You could use some other cleaner if you want, but we don't want any kind of residue on there from whether it was your mineral spirits or whatever. We want a completely clean surface. So I'm just going to take care of that now. And then we're going to start working on our tape. Okay, so now we're going to start working on our tape. And you can use butyl tape. I'm using, there's no label on it, but I'm using Flex Seal, which is expensive, but it works really, really well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this to width, because this comes in either 4 or 8 inch widths, and that's just too wide for what I'm doing. So I want to have just enough to bite both sides here. I want to have it here and wrap over, and maybe have an inch on each side. I don't want it to be sticking out from underneath the track very much. It just looks ugly if you do that. And I can't cut it with a razor blade afterwards because I'll go through and through the enamel and will cause rust, and I don't want to do that either. So I'm trying to make it as neat as possible. If you've got a better way to do this, leave me a comment below, and maybe I'll redo it. But I want to keep it pretty neat and not have a lot of overlap once I put that track back on again. So I'm going to take my tape, I'm going to take it in about that far, and then I'm going to wrap it around just a little bit. Come on back over here. And I'm going to go to it right about there. So I'm going to use half of the width of this tape, and I'm going to take a razor blade and just split this. And it has backing on the tape, so I can cut it with a razor blade. Once the backing is off, there's absolutely no way in the world I can do that. Okay, so I also need to, beforehand, I need to determine the total length that I need, because we don't want to have gaps together. We don't want to be splicing pieces of tape together. So I'm going to start from where I need to go and just start unrolling. And if you have a second person here, it's really helpful, but my second person is filming. You want to determine the total length that you need before you actually cut it. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to use one piece going all the way over there. And that's another reason you don't want to have too much tape, is because as it curves, you don't want to have it bunching up as you put it down. Okay, so I've got the length of my tape cut. Now I'm just cutting the width that I want right here. And I'm going to put the camera down so I can do this properly. Okay, so now we get to the tough part. I've got my tape cut to half width, and I want to start on the end where the hurricane hinge is, because that's where the most water runs, and that's where I want to make sure that everything is perfectly flat, and I'll work my way forward after that. Okay, so I'm just going to start peeling off this backing here. All right, so I'm going to tape that right down there and just start working my way back along the roof of the camper here. I'm just going to keep peeling this backing as I go. Be really careful with this stuff because if you mess up, it's really hard to pull it back off again. Okay, so I'm just pulling off the backing as I go, and as I continue, just keep pressing it down. You want it to be completely flat on top. You don't want anywhere where water can get underneath the tape. All right, and just keep going until you are completely done. Okay, so I've got the tape completely pressed down on the roof of the camper now, but the sides are still out, and this is the difficult part here because since you're pressing down in a curve, it can tend to get wrinkles in it, which is another reason that I did not want to have a lot of overlap, because the longer it is, the more wrinkles you get in it. Some of this will be covered by that aluminum strip that you put on here, but a little bit of it's going to be sticking out, and I want to have it as clean as possible. So I will just start working from, again, I'm going to start working from the hurricane hinge end and just start bending it over and pressing down real hard. We want a good seal on this here. I'm just going to start going just a fraction of an inch at a time, making sure I get all the bubbles out of this so it's completely flat. So far so good. Again, I'm on a curve here, so trying not to get any wrinkles in it. But as you can see here, we've now got a seamless weather strip that goes all the way around, and there's nowhere for water to get in between the ceiling and the side panel anymore. So that will eliminate any problems with water getting into this through that opening. Okay, so we got the tape completely wrapped around. My teardrop has got a really acute angle on the edge here, and so I'm not entirely happy with the way this part of it turned out. Some of it will end up being covered up by the trim. Again, I'm learning from this too, so if you have a better way to do this, please let me know in the comments. But this will be completely sealed now, and now it's just time to put our aluminum trim back on again and finish this up. You should be able to just use the original aluminum trim that you had before, unless you damaged it when you were taking it off. And basically it's just help it look a little bit better now. It's not actually providing any weather sealing or weather stripping on its own anymore. That is what the tape was for. Okay, just putting the aluminum trim back on. And so long as you did everything right, you should be able to just put your screws back into the original holes that they were in before. You're putting them through this tape, which is going to provide a weather seal on its own, and then you're also going to put the rubber track back on top of it again, which should further keep water out. Okay, so we've got it all sealed up and ready to go. That aspect of all our weather sealing is done now. I'll probably do a future video on a quick and easy way to seal up the piano hinges on these doors here that a lot of people have, but we'll get to that another time. For now, I'm just going to put this rubber track back where it belongs on this aluminum trim, and we will be done. So until next time, catch you later.